Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Jeff Moore, currently serving as the CEO of ICE. Before we deliver this episode for you, we got to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Jane, which is a clinical management software and EMR. Now, we all know that choosing the right EMR can be a bit overwhelming, especially for those of you who are just starting out. You're trying to juggle it all. The practice, budget, it's not the easiest combo. That's why Jane came up with their new balance plan. It includes the essential features you need to keep things running smoothly in your clinic without extra stuff you don't. But one-on-one telehealth, unlimited support, email reminders, and more are included no matter which plan you choose. So, if you're looking for an EMR that helps you focus on your patients, not your costs, Jane is here for you just like a part-time assistant. Plans start as low as $39 a month in the US. Head over to jane.app/pricing to learn more. And if you're ready to get started, use our code ICEPT1MO at sign up to get you that 1 month grace period on your new account. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show. Okay, well, Alan, welcome to the show, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. So, Alan, here's what we're going to do. I want you to lay out where you are right now, professionally, personally. Let people really understand, because I think where you've gotten it to is a very exciting place that a lot of people who want to blend education and clinical expertise with maintaining a family life, all of these things together, need to hear where you are so that we can then walk back and talk about how you actually got there. So go ahead and do that for the listeners.
Sure. So I split my time between a lot of stuff.
Yep.
I work here at ICE full time in the back end as our chief operating officer. So all the back end stuff that goes into making sure our staff have a successful teaching experience, whether they're out on the road on the weekend on a live course, whether they're on our app teaching their course online to their online classes, and everything in between, doing our payroll, working with the back end, the software developers on our app to make better features, make it better for our students, make it better for our staff, that sort of thing. So that's a big portion of my time. I also teach 2 different courses here at ICE. I teach in our fitness athlete division. So I teach clinical management fitness athlete level 1. That's an 8-week online course. That's an introduction to functional fitness, barbell lifting, CrossFit style exercise, programming, nutrition recovery, that sort of thing. So I teach that with Mitch Babcock. We teach that 4 to 5 times a year. And then I also teach in our practice management division. So I teach our brick by brick course where we take people who have either maybe never owned a business, never run a practice, or folks who maybe started and are worried they're not doing it right and are looking for some sort of refinement on everything from incorporation to help with getting set up for optimal taxation and that sort of thing. In addition to that, I run my own practice in Michigan. It's an outpatient orthopedic practice. It's a hybrid practice, which means we do take some insurance. So we take 3 insurances, and then everything else is cash. And so I am a practicing clinician there, and I also run the back end of that company as well. So
when you say back end, billing, all the logistics there.
Medical billing, running our EMR, payroll, taxes, that sort of stuff. And then I also coach CrossFit next door to our clinic at CrossFit Fenton.
Cool. And then personally?
I'm married, my wife Megan, and we have a 2-year-old son, Jonah. So I try to spend as much time as I can with them. I love to be active in Jonah's life, take him to swim class. I have my schedule set up, go pretty hard during the week so that I can have all day Friday with him. So I love Fridays with him. We have a nice easy morning at the house. We watch some cartoons. We have breakfast together. We usually go to the gym in the mid-morning, and then we go grab lunch together. And in the afternoon, we usually find some sort of activity to do. So I like that I get to spend all day Friday, every Friday with him.
I love that. So, I mean, that right there, I think is the goal of many. You blending all the things, blending teaching not only in the clinical space, but also in the business space, running the logistics for what is an increasingly large organization that is very dynamic, that exists in person, that exists online, treating patients, mentoring in the clinic, running all the billing, all the logistics for the clinic, coaching CrossFit, which you've got a passion for, while maintaining a family life and a kiddo at home. That would be considered firing on all cylinders. And I think so many people are like, that's what I'm trying to do. And part of this podcast is, let's show you how you did it. So take us back and let's just go back, not go back to when you were really young and why do you want to be a PT? I'm not sure there's a lot of value there, but let's go back to PT school where you began to differentiate yourself, because to get where you've gotten, you have to. Where, as you look back, do you see some of those key moments where you began to make decisions that led to where you are today?
Sure. So the fall of our second year in our program, we have our first full-time rotation, and it's 6 weeks, and it's randomly assigned. So I had an interesting rotation where it was a mixture of pediatrics and pelvic health. I was not allowed to sit in on any of the pelvic health sessions as a male. So whenever we had a pelvic patient, I just had to sit in the office and twiddle my thumbs. So I didn't really enjoy that, obviously. And then I wasn't really passionate about pediatrics, particularly we worked with really young kids. So we worked with a lot of folks with, babies with torticollis. And I just didn't enjoy that. And I saw myself saying, well, I don't think I could do this the rest of my life. Yep. And just the way full-time practice looked to me as well, it seemed to be really repetitive. It seemed to be very overwhelming from a workload perspective of my clinical instructor of, I'm not sure how this person does this every day. It's like their full-time job. It seems to be too much work for the reward. And so I came back to campus the second semester of our second year thinking, I'm going to give this one more semester, and if I don't see the ship kind of right itself, so to speak, I think I'm going to get off the ship. And I had come into physical therapy school from the military and thought, I don't know if the military is for me again, but I also only have 10 more years until I could retire. So I think I could gut it out for 10 years and then retire and then go find what I really wanted to do, whatever that might be 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
And that's where I found some classmates who were in the cafeteria of our PT school building in the corner watching something on their phone that they wouldn't show me what it was. And they were my friends Dan Crusoe, who was in my class, and Mitch Babcock, who works here with us at ICE. I teach with him in our fitness athlete division, and I co-own our clinic back home with him as well. And they would just not tell me what they were watching. And eventually, at some point into that semester, they finally told me that they were watching this guy named Jeff Moore scream at people on this program called Periscope, which was, we're dating ourselves, the first live streaming platform really, as far as just being able to open up your phone and fire up a video to the world. And so you would get on there, I think you got on there at 6 a.m. Eastern, which was early.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And you would just talk about a different clinical topic, a different pattern or technique or exam or something like that for 15 minutes. And then you would hop off and you would go into practice yourself with your own patients. And so we would watch you, and that really fired us up. And then I learned from them that you were starting this Masterminds program that met I think we met on Tuesday nights at 8 or 8:30. Yeah. And we just talked about a different thing. We got a deep, nuanced dive into a different topic every week for about an hour. Yep. And then talked about patient cases and that sort of stuff. And that really kind of showed me that maybe what I had experienced in my first rotation was not the whole slice, the whole pie, so to speak, but rather just one slice that maybe I didn't care for, but that there was maybe more in the profession for me if I could just get exposed to more practicing clinicians.
I think it's worth pausing right there, because your story about going out on a rotation, many students don't get to choose it. I don't want to say they get stuck in it, but that's kind of the reality of it. And they don't have a great experience, and they say, I don't think I'm going to finish. I don't want to finish. This is not what I thought I signed up for. I mean, we hear that even now regularly. Unlike most people, you chose to do something about it. And I guess because this seems to be maybe one of the first kind of branches where you began to build the community and eventually the life that you unfolded earlier, 8 o'clock Eastern is not a convenient time to hang out with someone that doesn't have a proven track record. I mean, I was brand new to teaching. I guess what compels somebody when they're already busy with school, when they've got a lot of things going on, things are stressful, you're already thinking about maybe I'm going to change directions. There's a lot going on. Why allocate the time, the resources on an unproven track to jump in and just see what it's all about?
I think what drew me to it was hearing that it was the first time I heard that maybe healthcare in general was not infallible, of that maybe my perception that what I had seen of not being too focused on outcomes, of not being too focused on progressing the care that we provide to a patient as they improve. I didn't really see that, but that's what I heard on Masterminds. And I thought, I think that's what is missing from a lot of people's practice. Yet I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and I haven't seen it happen in practice so far. And I thought, if we can get more of this, then maybe we can improve not only our own practice, but other people's practice as well. And that it was a matter of, not that it couldn't be done, it was just we had a lot of work ahead of us to get there, but that it was possible. And it just involved improving our own practices and helping other people improve theirs.
I just love that, because it's a choice to do something besides nothing. You come back from your clinical, you're kind of bummed out. It's like, man, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. But then you see something off to the side that catches your eye, in a willingness to stay optimistic, to stay engaged, to go check it out, to spend time on Tuesday nights, to just keep looking for what that spark might be. I think so many folks don't do that. I think a lot of folks wave the flag, and they never find a way to get passionate, in a different avenue than what they maybe saw on the N=1 example of their clinical, for example. So I would love to tell the listeners the next part of our story, because right away you were, as you are today, ruthlessly methodical about never missing a session, right? If Masterminds was going on, Alan was going to be there. He was going to be on time. He was going to be ready to rock and roll. But it was really when you brought up, and I'm not sure how many weeks or months into the program it was, that you brought up to me, you said, Dr. Moore, would you ever come and teach us, like in person, at the University of Michigan, Flint, where you all were? And I'll never forget telling you, I said, well, Alan, I would, but just so you know, there's a ton of logistical burden. There's a lot of red tape. You're welcome to try, but, don't burn yourself out on it. And I totally dismissed, this offer you had made. And a week later, you called me back and said, hey, thanks for, saying you would do it. We're all set. We've got the lab all set up. We have a security guard that's going to be there. I've checked all their boxes. We are fully cleared hot. We've got CEU approval. And I remember my mind just being blown, because I had tried to teach at schools a few times and just gotten exhausted by them peppering me with logistical questions and me not quite knowing answers. The fact that you had done it so quickly and so effectively really, really caught my attention. I guess, what was your thoughts in bringing that offer to me? Why did you want to make it happen? Why were you not daunted by, how am I going to convince a school to do it? I guess, give us some perspective on what made you go for that.
Well, I wanted to bring the course in because we were interested in the content. Hearing little snippets on Periscope made me think, like, I want more of this, but at once versus these 15-minute segments. And then logistical side, coming from the military, logistics, beans and bullets, as we would say, is just part of the job. You're taught to to always ask for help. And so if you don't understand something, find the person who's in charge of that and ask them what the process is. And it's their job to explain it to you and kind of teach you, well, if you wanted to do this, these would be the steps. And so I knew there would be a person in the PT program at school who would know what it looked like to bring in an outside event, no matter what it was. And so there was a person for that. There was an event coordinator, and just scheduling time with that person. Hey, what does it look like to bring in an outside provider? Okay, these are the steps. We need these waivers. We have to pay for this security guard because the building is open on the weekends. I already known I was working for the PT program as the lab coordinator. So I cleaned the labs, maintained all the equipment, fixed the tables, that sort of stuff. So I already knew that the labs were available all weekend, every weekend. And so that we weren't intruding on any class events to have it. And it's just a matter of finding out what steps, what boxes we had to check, forms we had to sign to be able to bring the course in.
I love it. And then at the end of this course, which I was already shocked you pulled off, you walked up to me and you said, Dr. Moore, I want to do more of this. Where else do you teach? How else can I get more information? And I remember telling you, I said, well, Alan, actually, kind of funny, we're down here in Flint. I teach up in Traverse City, but just so you know, it's the exact same course. Like, it's going to be the same words 5 days from now, 2 days lumbar spine. And you nodded your head and said, great, I'll be there. And I thought, I wonder if this guy's actually going to go. Like, he just took this course. We're finishing it right now. And sure enough, I get there and call you, and you're at a campground. It's pouring rain. Talk a bit about the decision to do that, even though you had just done the course. Why would you go 5 days later? Just lay out that decision-making process and that event for us.
I think it's the realization that just because you've done something once, you're probably never even good at it after one rep, but you're nowhere close to mastery, if mastery is even possible in a specific thing. And so I think a lot of, like, the military, we went to the range and shot all the time. And you can always get better at marksmanship. You can always get better at physical fitness. And so with most things in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And having just gone through that 2-day course, I thought I learned a lot, but I think another time through, I'll take more out of it, which I don't think is all too different from watching a very cerebral movie, maybe like sci-fi-y, where you watch it once and you think, whoa, that was kind of trippy. And then you kind of let it digest a little bit. And then you watch it a second time, even though you've already seen the movie, and you think, I got more out of it the second time. And, there's some movies where some people will say every time I watch it, I learn or take something different away from it. I don't think that's all too different from my experience taking a continuing education course. I still go to our courses now. I've taken our courses dozens of times. And there's still, there's new research. There's refined ways for techniques and loading principles and that sort of stuff. So I think there's always more to take away, even if traditionally we think I've already done that thing, therefore it's checked off forever. I think if you're truly dedicated to improving your practice, you recognize that repetition is really important, even if that comes with the cost of revisiting a course you may have taken 5 days ago or 2 years ago or whatever the time frame might be.
I love that because it's distinctly different from the more common attitude. How often do we hear at ICE, hey, can I skip level 1? I'm already pretty good at that stuff and go right into level 2. Your approach was the exact opposite. I just took this. Can I take it again 5 days later? I know there's more meat on the bones. I have the humility to recognize I can't absorb everything at once and I need psychomotor reps, and I'll just keep doing this until I've decided there's nothing left to pull from it, which even today is not the case, which is awesome. And I think really separates you from most people. And then the final straw was actually only a few weeks after that course. And my final straw, where you and I really locked forces, and that was you were following up with me to get your certificate from that class. And you said, hey, Dr. Moore, very polite, hey, I haven't seen my certificate. And I said, well, yeah, it's only been a week. This will take me quite a while. And you said, well, why? And in my mind, I'm like, well, it's hard. You got to create a bunch of PDFs and you got to switch all the names and it's a whole deal. And you were like, would you mind just shooting me over that list? And I did, of all the attendees. And I went and saw one patient and I came back and you had emailed me with all the PDFs attached. And that was the moment where I said, dude, do you want to run this company with me? Because you're doing things, whether it was with the school and setting all that up, whether it was with the certificates and utilizing computer software to do it, you were clearly doing things with a level of proficiency in an area for me that was high friction and making it seem very effortless. And I guess I'll have you tell the story of my offer to you at that moment, because I think it's worth, what you said yes to is worth talking about.
Yeah, so we took those courses with you during a semester where we had a class where we had to take outside Con Ed.
Right.
So I needed that certificate that was our last semester on campus too. So I needed those to get credit to actually be able to start my rotations and graduate. So I really, really needed them. And I asked you to unpack your process, and instantly I recognized it could get a lot better. And so as we worked together, you asked me a couple other things. You asked me, how can I create a community of people after they've taken a course? Like, what thing could I do? And I thought, well, you should send a post-course email where you invite people to join a group. And you said, post-course email, interesting. And so we had a couple back and forth exchanges like that. And eventually you said, will you just come work for me? And I said, sure. And you said, okay, just so you know, I can't pay you anything. I might never be able to pay you anything, but you can come to all the ICE courses that you want. Which is kind of funny now, because back then it was just your 2 courses, cervical and lumbar spine management. And so we didn't have the catalog that we have now. And so I said yes. And I guess I said yes because part of what makes my brain happy is helping people get more efficient at doing stuff, especially when it's not their forte, with things like logistics, things like getting organized. Becoming more comfortable with technology and recognizing, as frustrating as technology can be, if we learn how to use it, we learn how to use it well, as it's intended, it can really help save us a lot of time and money. And so I've recognized over the years, I should probably ask people's consent before I point out how inefficient they're being at stuff. But nonetheless, I watch somebody work and I think, if I could tell this person a couple things, I think I could save them like 2 hours a week. And so that's what really makes my brain happy. And not that money isn't important. You can't pay your mortgage with the reward of helping somebody become more efficient at work. But also, it's very rewarding for me to get somebody to that point where this previously maybe insurmountable task is now just part of their daily life, and it's no longer this burden to them. It's actually maybe something that gives them time or money back in their life. And so that was as much of a reward for me as potentially eventually getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it more like an investment.
And that was the eventually, right? Because my exact pitch was, dude, I can't pay you anything right now. And I was willing to show you the receipts. I mean, I was driving around in my truck, charging very little for classes, making zero money, losing money most weekends. But I did say, but if this works, I promise we'll do it together and we'll reap the rewards together. And to you, it seemed like that was enough.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple things there not said, which is a lot of folks go to work, and no matter how hard they work or how much time they spend refining their work, it never yields a reward for them because that's not the work environment that they are currently working in, which is very different from a work environment where, not to say the more you work, the more you make, but you reap more of the reward, more of a revenue or a profit share model, which is very different from how most organizations run. And so I think I recognized that it might not pay off immediately, but like I said, it's an investment. I knew that if we could get more organized and more efficient, it would free up more bandwidth to mentor other people to teach our courses and open up our catalog of courses, and that would lead to more growth, which would lead to more reward for everybody involved.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that's exactly what happened, right? I mean, because I had been teaching for a while prior of you taking over the reins on the logistical side. And let's be real honest, if it was just me, I'd still be driving the truck around Michigan and Wisconsin because the logistical burden of website development and CEU approvals and organization of every aspect and the legals behind it, it's just was never going to be for me. And so you taking that space and fueling our company's competence in that area change the trajectory of what we are. We'd never be sitting here having this conversation if that hadn't happened. So that being said, let's pause the ICE story for a minute. So now you're on board as the chief operating officer, unpaid. We're on an internship, and you're only halfway through PT school.
I was in my second year. Yeah, I was finishing my second year.
Okay, so take us from interests you had there on the backside of your PT school, what you were going to do when you graduated, and kind of what that transition looked like, and then we'll unpack more from there.
So I starting officially working for ICE at the end of the final semester on campus of my third year.
Okay.
And so then I transitioned to the final semester of terminal clinical rotation. So I had 3 rotations that year. One was in acute care at a hospital, which I did not really enjoy. It was very similar to my first full-time rotation in my second year. And then I had a rotation in outpatient orthopedics, which was a very, 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 very high volume clinic. Yeah. And I knew while I enjoyed that population, I didn't enjoy that pace. And then I had a rotation at a neurological clinic where we primarily worked with patients with spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. And I really enjoyed that rotation. I had a really tough but fair and productive experience with my clinical instructor, Mandy, who sharpened me up considerably. And so I had seen myself applying for and getting a position as a neurological resident at a clinic a little bit a ways from my house, but I thought worth the investment to go through the residency program, get my NCS, that sort of thing. And I kind of put all my eggs in that basket as I was approaching the end of school. Ended up not getting that position because I didn't have enough experience. And so I was kind of left not with nothing to do, but with no formal plan of where I was going to work. And so began looking for positions just close to my house, just to get started after school once I got my license. Ended up taking a position with an outpatient physical therapy clinic about 20 minutes north of my house, which is very traditional outpatient orthopedic clinic, not too different from the style of care that we were taught to provide in school. Not in line with what I was learning more and more of as I was taking courses at ICE. And as we had started to expand our library and include things like Fitness Athlete, which was launched as I was graduating school, was when we launched the Fitness Athlete online course, the first course.
So you took that right away. I mean, like you were jumped in and learned that material, and you're in this sort of traditional outpatient clinic. What was CMFA, Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete that we called it? What was that course teaching you? that wasn't in your practice or maybe in your life? And how did those kind of concoction of variables mix together?
What was not definitely in my life was very unhealthy at the time. I had left the military. For those who don't know, finishing high school, I was about 400 pounds. And then I lost some weight as I started undergrad. And then I joined the Army and was relatively healthy and fit-ish for about a decade. And then coming back and finishing undergrad and grad school, I had gone almost immediately back up to 400 pounds. So that's kind of where I was at, starting practice as a new grad. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have fitness or health in my personal life, and it wasn't present in my practice either. It was very much manual therapy, modality based, and the exercises were not objective. They weren't outcome focused. There was no rhyme or reason to the dosage. It was TheraBands and ankle weights and stuff. And so going through the fitness athlete curriculum and learning about even things like RPE, like I'd always known about RPE, but in school they were always taught kind of as more cardiovascular focused. If we ask for RPE when somebody's on the new step, we don't ask RPE when somebody is doing cuff weights, because why would you do that? But learning from Mitch of like, this can be applied to therapeutic exercise too, and it should be, of if we're actually going to create strength change, if we're going to say we're making this person stronger, then we need to be testing how strong that person is before we start, but we also need to be sure that the intensity of that is higher. And so bought a set of kettlebells, brought into the clinic, started having people deadlift and squat and push press and kettlebell swing and that sort of stuff. And so trunk loaded kettlebells, bring it to the clinic every day. Take them back out because they weren't allowed to be in the clinic. They could only be in the clinic when I was there using them with my patients. So they went into my trunk every night, drove them home, they rattled around, came back, came in 30 minutes early so I could unload them all, bring them all into the clinic, and kind of went through that rigmarole for a while.
Now, while this is happening, talk a bit about your personal changes as far as your interest in this area, and just unpack that because I think they parallel one another.
Yeah, so as I was beginning to introduce more fitness into my clinical practice is when I found CrossFit too. So February of 2018, I had actually been going to the CrossFit gym that I coach at now, but to see Mitch, who would treat me. I had terrible neck pain and headaches, terrible low back pain. Sometimes I would miss several days of work in a row due to low back pain. I would just be at home, just chowing down ibuprofen. And really from nothing. I was not active, so they weren't, sports related injuries. They were the side effect of sedentary lifestyle. And so I would go see Mitch, and I would feel better for a couple of days, and I rode that train for a while. And along that way, he was always, I would walk through the CrossFit gym, Mitch's clinic, before we had an actual standalone clinic next door. He was in a loft in the gym. And so I'd walk through CrossFit class, through all these people doing all the stuff I do every day now, and I would say, look at these morons throwing this ball at the wall and jumping rope like kids. And I would poo-poo them. And I would go up to the loft, and I would work with Mitch, and I would feel better, and I'd walk back through CrossFit class, and he'd say, you should try this, you should try this, you should try this. And I came in undergrad from a very strength and conditioning, National Strength and Conditioning Association, CSCS program that told me in that textbook that what I was watching wasn't possible, that it's not possible for somebody to be strong and fast. It's not possible to do strength and conditioning together. You always must do one or the other. You have to have so much rest in order to get hypertrophy and strength. And if you don't have that perfect dosage, perfect rest, fit helped not only myself, obviously, but also helped reinforce to the members of, okay, maybe there isn't somebody who's too out of shape to kind of come back from the brink.
Yeah. And then talk about, you attacked it with fervor, kind of classic now that I know you better. But talk about kind of your first entry into it in the tempo and rhythm of your workouts, et cetera.
I definitely was too aggressive. I saw immediate benefits, almost instantly. All of the full body pain I had started to go away. I was somebody I used to get these 1,000 count bottles from the VA of ibuprofen, and they were all 800s. And I would just take a handful of those before work. That's how much pain I had. And that was just to get me through the day. And as I began CrossFit, recognizing why am I taking this? I don't need it. Like, I don't think I have pain anymore. Starting to feel better, starting to get better objectively with stuff like my blood pressure and my blood glucose levels and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That all changed. And so I came at it from the mindset of, if some is good, more is better. And so I bought the stuff and turned my apartment garage into a home gym. And so I would go to CrossFit class, but then I would go into my garage and do extra stuff. I wanted to be able to do pull-ups, and I wanted to be able to do handstand push-ups. And I would probably rode the assault bike every day for the first 6 months. I was like, I knew this would help my fitness somehow. So I would just do a million different assault bike workouts. In reality, it realistically overdid the volume.
Yeah.
I definitely had a lot of shoulder pain the first couple months of CrossFit.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have been kipping as much as I was, considering my strict pull-up development was not there. But I think a lot of people fall into that trap initially because the benefits of beginning any fitness program, let alone a high intensity program, they come so fast. You just want to keep riding that train. And the pain is maybe secondary to all of the health benefits that you begin to perceive.
I love that. And this is not a story just to tell a story. I think this paints a clear picture of, if you had not done this, if you had not chosen to be about it, your teaching with Fitness Athlete would have been a fiction. And I think it's so important for the listener to look back, and it is actions that are creating results. If we go back to Ice's story, it is you willing to say, I didn't love what I saw in my clinical, but what are those guys up to? And I'm going to show up at 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to tell Jeff I'm going to host him here at the school. And I'm going to go to the same class next weekend. And I'm going to organize his PDFs. And I'm going to do all of it without asking for anything in return. I'm going to act. I'm going to do something besides nothing. And I'm going to see if I can make a difference. And the result is your future with Ice.
Well, shit, dude. I think about this all the time. Not only that, but if I hadn't done that, that was 7 years ago now, would I even be alive anymore? I'm almost 40, and I have friends from high school who are starting to have heart attacks and strokes and joint replacements, and they're starting to kind of fall off the cliff, and we're not even 40 yet. So I reflect on that a lot of not only where would my professional life be, but would I have a personal life so far as would I even be alive anymore, considering how out of shape I was then. What's 7 years more in the future look like? If I was already 415 pounds, would I even be alive?
Yeah. So speaking of how it changed your professional life, let's talk about that, because it's one thing. We all want to see folks get healthier. I feel very called to it. Most all of us are deep in those trenches. But it's different when you come from where you came from and personally got yourself healthier. How has that changed your perspective on patient care? Like, how has that, I guess just speak to having done that yourself and seen your own transformation. What does that do to the way that you behave in the clinic, what you want to do in the clinic, et cetera?
I think it challenges me to find a way for my patients who are not already active to become active, but in a way where I also recognize that I moved around a lot in the fitness sphere before I found the thing that I enjoy doing that I will do on a consistent basis. And that might not be CrossFit for all of my patients, even though it would be convenient because we're often out in the CrossFit gym doing our exercises. So recognizing they need fitness, but I can't force any particular type on them. I have to expose them to a bunch of different things and hope that they find enjoyment in one of those things. So yes, we're going to program your rehab exercise like CrossFit. And if you like that, great. Good news. You're already where you need to be. Let's get a membership. Let's try your first class with me as a coach. Let's let your discharge visit be a CrossFit class that I'm coaching so that you feel safe. It's the same person that was your therapist is now your coach. Let's try that. If you hate it, okay, meet me at Orange Theory. Meet me at Pilates. Meet me at the track. Let's just keep trying stuff until we find something where you think you could do this 4 to 6 days a week for the rest of your life, whatever it might be. And I have no bias. Again, it would be convenient and it would be lucrative from a business perspective if you found CrossFit, but I recognize we're not going to get 100% of the people, yet it's on me to help that person find that thing.
How often do you find yourself sharing your story with some of the folks that are deconditioned? Like, when they say, well, I can't do what you do you go into it? How I'm curious.
I never try to put my experience on somebody else and say that I was pretty far gone too, and I did it, so you should be able to do it. I don't think that's fair.
Hmm.
However, I do have that in my biography on our website. So when you go to book an appointment with me, you see that. Yeah. And I do find that I have patients who come see me specifically because while they may be coming for a physical therapy diagnosis, they're also coming and looking for a lifestyle change. Mm. They're looking to get into fitness. They're looking to refine their fitness. Maybe they're already active, but they need help on the recovery side. Yeah. So they're coming to me with help on what does eating more protein look like? How can I get more protein? What about sleep? All that sort of stuff. And so they seek me out because my story is out there for them to see.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're in the clinic. You're falling in love with CrossFit. Like you said, you're seeing the gains. You're on the gain train, right? I mean, we're decreasing ibuprofen. You're feeling better and stronger. You're hitting PRs. You're probably doing a bit much, but you're doing it because you're seeing so many positive effects. This is clearly motivating you to help others do the same. It's not necessarily happening a whole bunch in the clinic that you're in. Talk about how you built an exit strategy, not one where you just hit a board, but one that really, made sense in your actual professional and personal lives. How did you see the writing on the wall and do it had to be done?
So I started CrossFit in February 2018, and almost immediately I went and took the level 1 course. And I wanted to get learn more about the CrossFit methodology, learn more about the coaching side of things, even if at that time I didn't even know I would be a coach. And so I was already a level 1 coach. And then the summer of 2018, Mitch Babcock had asked me, what do you think about opening up a clinic together here? Because at the time, the business next door was going out of business. It was a indoor softball batting cage business. And it was located right next to the gym. Obviously, the location was great and the price was right. And he had talked about, I think, given where we live, Southeast Michigan, all the big automakers are there, a lot of colleges, universities, schools, a lot of teachers, so a lot of higher quality, higher paying insurance. And he said, I think, what do you think about like a hybrid practice where we take some insurances and then everybody else pays cash? I think that would be a good blend where we could get a good start with a clinic practice of our own. And he said, do you know anything about that? And I said, yeah, I know everything about that. So Mitch's background, graduating and coming immediately into cash-based practice in the gym, did not really know the back end of kind of a traditional clinic, so to speak. And so he had asked me that, and I said, yeah, let's do that. And so I began to step down my time at my current position to give us time to demo and renovate what is now the clinic, to begin to work on stuff like insurance credentialing and basically begin to lay the scaffolding to open our own clinic, which we did in January of 2019.
And when you say work on this stuff, you didn't hire a business coach. You didn't. How does someone work on this stuff and figure it out from scratch?
Yeah, my mind doesn't really work that way. When I think about help, I'm getting better at this, of asking other people for help. But naturally, I know that other people are doing it. And so many other people are doing it at a point, I think it can't be that difficult. If tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people are doing it, then there has to be a clear systematic process. I just have to figure out what that is. So I have to work in reverse of, if I want to be a network with an insurance company, what does that look like? It probably looks like going to their website and there's probably some sort of application or something like that. And so just beginning to do that process with everything we needed to do, from getting licensed with the township and getting our permits for the building, to getting the parking lot painted for spots and making sure our clinic was ADA compatible, all that stuff, all the way up to insurance credentialing, and then eventually teaching myself stuff like medical billing.
Yep. So you're stepping down, like 80% of your time is now in the traditional outpatient, 20%, and then you just sort of staggered that until you made the jump over.
I basically looked at it of, as soon as I had enough patients where I needed to spend another day at Health HQ, I would move down another day at my previous position, until the point it became that I was spending so little time there that it just seemed best to part ways at that point.
Got it. And as you're developing Health HQ, I mean, that became, and we're going to have another episode on this, but that really became very fertile information for what became Brick by Brick. I mean, having done every single step of it yourself and taking, kind of ruthless notes along the way, that became the playbook to help others.
Sure. I know very well what not to do.
Yeah.
So I think teaching people the most efficient, systematic way to do that in a way that's going to save them a lot of time and money. And for me, my mindset with that course is let's create a sustainable practice so that you feel happy going to work every day, and the folks who maybe eventually come to work for you also feel the same way that you do as the owner. And I think that's one of my big goals with that course. And I think that's what I learned as we kind of got into the back end of opening up our own practice.
Yeah. And just to highlight for the listener again, yet another example, I'm in this outpatient practice, but I've chosen to be about it in my life, and it's beginning to affect how I want to change the lives of others, but it can't really be done here. Lugging my own kettlebells in, first of all, is inconvenient, but number one is not the whole solution. The solution is to create a place where I can practice and other people can practice in a way that aligns with my values. Not waving the flag, but also not just putting yourself in a horrible position where you just jumped over, but instead systematically creating the next opportunity to better align with what you knew you wanted to do and maybe could even help others do.
I think you should never give up that someone or something being an organization can change. However, I think part of being an adult is also learning to recognize when maybe it can't, or maybe when the time and money cost on you, the expectation there to change it is maybe so high that it's not feasible to put that burden, especially on yourself as an individual. So knowing where to ride that line and where it may be you can stay and affect change, and if that's possible, great, but sometimes you can't. Yeah. And knowing when you can and when you can is really important.
Yeah. Beautiful. The last thing I want to chat about in this episode, because we're going to have, this is leading us perfectly into Brick by Brick, to talk about all things business and how you all do what you've done, how you help others, as well as in CMFA, what you do in the CrossFit gym. There's going to be coaching conversations. We have a lot more to talk about, but how did you, in this transition, set up a productive and yet not so overlapping it's disruptive relationship with the CrossFit gym? Because what you all have seems like kind of the perfect example of you're independent. I mean, you could totally roll up there and just be a Health HQ patient and have no interest in CrossFit, and you would not feel, you're not even walking through the gym. I mean, it's a separate entrance. Yet it certainly has the vibe of being somewhere where folks are on the fitness train and a lot of people. How did you work with the owners? I guess any insight or things that you would speak to on how that became to be such a beautiful, what it is now?
I think we're really focused on the clinical side, Mitch and I as the owners, but all of our staff, of providing value to the coaches and the members of the gym. Mm-hmm. And I think that's first of all, it's helpful to have 5 physical therapists in the gym at any given time. Yeah. We're all CrossFit athletes at CrossFit Fenton. And so not only do you see us in the gym with our patients when we have our physical therapist hat on, but you also see us in the gym in class as athletes, and you see some of us in the gym as coaches. So we're basically always there. You can't get away from us. Yeah. And we're focused on, not that we're trying to stay out of the way of the gym, but we're very tough on ourselves of, we never want to take up space, equipment, or time from gym members in class, because the most important function of that gym is getting as many people through fitness as possible in a day. And so providing as much value as we can, coaching, workshops, helping coaches. It happens a million times a day that a coach runs over and asks one of the therapists, hey, I've got this member who has X going on. Can you give me 3 different modifications for whatever movement is in the workout today? And those little touch points really kind of reinforce that although there's no official business partnership between Health HQ and CrossFit Fenton, there's also a really unbreakable bond, because it's kind of our goal that we give so much to the gym that if we were to leave, there would kind of be a vacuum that would be felt. And so that partnership has just kind of naturally developed in a way where neither side is officially giving one or the other anything, money, anything like that, of just being there because we want to be a part of that community. And we are part of that community because, like I said, we're in class every day. We're in the gym every day with our patients, and some of us are coaching class. So we're really intertwined in a way that works really well without needing to have any sort of percentage revenue back and forth on paper or kind of anything official like that.
I love that. Well, Alan, I want to pause and I'm going to ask you if you have any words of advice for the listeners as I recap this, but I think your story reflects a very clear pattern. Going out in your clinical and thinking, I'm probably going to wrap up PT school. This is not for me. I've seen it. At least I've seen what I think it is. I don't love it. I'm probably going to look for other options. But staying open-minded, seeing one, and being willing to jump into a community that you didn't know a whole lot about to see where it would go, because it sounded like it might be something different and better, but not just being a part of it, but adding value over and over again with no ask. Adding value from helping us to host courses, to coming to back-to-back courses, to helping us with PDFs. And like you said, there were other asks on my logistics. Just being a resource and being willing to share what you knew to help you get better in an area where you were really concerned there wasn't going to be a great future, but you were going to hunt for it. Your personal fitness at an all-time low, choosing to go into this gym where everybody's in great shape, doing a hard partner workout, getting laid out on the floor, but then for some reason choosing to commit to coming back over and over and over and over again until your personal life is radically transformed, your mental and physical health, to the point where you want to share it with patients. But where you are, you can't. So what do? You accept that, you acknowledge it, and you start building. And you create a clinic. You have no mentorship to do this, and yet you create an environment where you can take those passions and put them into practice, which is now perfectly in line with the things that you've seen grow in your own life to be so fruitful, and now you're sharing it with others. Over and over and over again, you were at the bottom of the area and decided you were going to find a way to the top. And you repeated this across multiple domains. It's how you got to where you are. It's what, when you laid out at the beginning of the story, this is where I am, and all the listeners said, ooh, I want to do that. Well, there was the how. Do you have any advice for what makes you able, willing to take each of these domains and climb from the bottom to the top of the mountain over and over again?
Well, I don't know that I'm at the top. You make me sound really accomplished, so thank you. I think it's a combination of not being satisfied with the way things are. Like the phrase, this is just the way we do things, that really makes my blood pressure really high. Like I want to destroy when I hear that, of this is just the way we do things, of nothing is ever perfect. Stuff can always get better. Literally every aspect of your life can always be improved. Your fitness can always get better. Your relationship with your spouse, your kids can always be worked on. You can always cut your grass more efficiently. Like you can think about that with every single dimension of your life. And while you can't get better at all of it all the time, life has seasons. And I think looking at something and kind of triaging, what is the thing that's the biggest pain point in my life right now? And for a lot of folks, most of the time, it's probably work. And so what about it don't you like? And I think looking at it of what can I do to make things better where I'm currently at? But like we talked about before, also recognizing like know when to hold them, know when to fold them type mentality of if it's time to fold them, what does that look like? And so being open-minded that sometimes things have to change, and that means you may need to change jobs, you may need to move physically, and just being open to the idea that things can get better, but also it's gonna require some input from you, and not everything pays off. I think we've had a lot of examples of that here at ICE. Yeah. The immersion program comes to mind of the expectation that everything you do with your time and money always yields a positive ROI, I think is unrealistic. So being open-minded, but also not throwing in the towel when an endeavor doesn't go the way you want it. Of just, for me, I learn more from my failures than maybe I do from my successes. Like I said, I know a lot about what not to do, and I'm happy to share that information with people, but there's a lot of learning to happen when you lose as well. Yeah. And just taking that away and saying, it's not that I'm not going to do this again, I just know what not to do, and I know maybe to try it a different way next time.
I saw a great reel the other day. I'm sure it was one of you all that put it up, but it said, the idea is not to avoid failure, but to fail so hard that winning has no choice but to respect you. And I thought, shit, that hits. Like, as we look back at our past 10 years, there's a lot to be said for that. Well, Alan, thank you. We are going to stop right here because I want to take very deep dives into what you have to share with people about starting a business, doing it well. You've seen them at every age and stage of growth. And I think it's going to be wonderful for you to point out some highlights of immediate things to do, but also how to future-proof yourself, how to really create walls around your business that allow you to build something, foundational, tall, in that is very forward seeking. And we're going to have another episode on all things fitness athlete movement, your thoughts, your philosophies, mine. We have plenty to hash out. Thanks for being here for this first episode, and we'll see you next time on this 3-part series.
Thank you.